Okay. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Everyone on Facebook, good morning, good morning. We are so happy to have you here today for our fourth trimester Tucson Village Gathering. And today we have a very special guest from Tucson. I'm super excited to have her here with us today. Her name is Dr. Alina Boelman, and she's going to talk to us about navigating postpartum. This is a super important topic, just in general, but I think especially given everything that went on with the pandemic and still continues to go on, I think it's even more important. And Dr. Boelman was born and raised here in Arizona, which we're super excited to have her here today because she is like many of us, right? Lives here and was raised here. She attended medical school at the University of Arizona and completed her pediatric residency at Stanford University. She has been working as a pediatrician in Tucson for over 3 years and currently practices at Tonka Verde Pediatrics. Dr. Boelman finds so much joy in being a pediatrician and bonding with the families in her practice. Since having her first baby in January 2021, she has taken a special interest in supporting parents during the first months of new parenthood. She is also pursuing a certification to become a lactation consultant to better serve breastfeeding mothers. When not at the office, Dr. Boelman enjoys spending time with her husband, daughter, and 2 dogs, long distance running, playing the cello, reading, and cooking healthy recipes. We are so delighted to have you with us today, Dr. Boelman. Yay, that's wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. For my talk, I have some slides to just kind of walk us through, but mostly I plan on sharing with you guys my story and why this has become close to my heart, a special interest for me, especially as a pediatrician. And then I'll put on my pediatrician hat and kind of go over a little bit more, technical things and educational stuff. So I'm going to do the share screen right now. All right, so yes, I'm Alina Boelman. It's so nice to be here with everyone and meet all of you. And for everyone on Facebook Live, hello. So I thought I'd start with a poem just kind of as an opener, and just for full disclosure, I will probably get tearful and might cry a little bit during this talk, as everyone knows, it's an emotional time, postpartum is. But this poem is by an author that I really found helpful in the postpartum period. A friend actually sent it to me when I had talked about how I was struggling, especially the late nights and, lack of sleep. And she's like, you got to check out this author. She writes about motherhood and just really hits things spot on. And her name is Jessica Ehrlichs, if anyone else wanted to check her out. But this poem, I think, just is so beautiful, describing the postpartum period. So, my darling, you were the storm that crashed against me, that took the shoreline with it, the tide that rocked and soothed me, the wind that had me mourning for the leaves you kissed into autumn. You were the fire that ignited mine when the darkness took hold, the sun showers that moved me in streams down my cheeks, the warmth that breathed life into my core, my roots grounded, my heart soaring. You were the seasons they spoke of, ever changing and blooming, for I thought I was growing you when you were growing me too.
Oh, wow.
And so I just love that, because I think, motherhood came crashing for me. I thought it would be a really smooth transition, and it wasn't, but it really was such a period of personal transformation and growth. And now, kind of being on the other side of it, this really spoke to me. So anyway, so my story, looking back on things now, I think that my struggle in the postpartum period really began perinatally. I got married in 2019 to my husband. We had been together for a while, long distance relationship while in residency. So we had been through a lot, and we had already decided pre-pandemic that 2020 was our time to have children and to grow our family. So when the pandemic hit, we, knowing what I know as a doctor, I knew that it probably wasn't going to be a short-lived thing, and we decided to just continue on. I did end up getting pregnant. It took a while, but I did. And I unfortunately, in that first pregnancy, had an early miscarriage on Mother's Day. And thank you. That kind of set the stage of worry from day one, because that pregnancy didn't even though we were so hopeful and so joyful. So we were lucky that I got pregnant with my daughter Tatum pretty shortly after that experience, but obviously the whole pregnancy, I just kept waiting for the shoe to drop. Something bad was going to happen in my mind. Even when I heard the first heartbeat and when I saw the anatomy scan, I always in the back of my mind just thought, this is too good to be true. There's, something's going to happen. And then working as a healthcare worker during a pandemic where we didn't know how COVID was being transmitted. We didn't know the effects on mothers or on babies. We didn't know how to protect ourselves. There was a lot of anxiety there during pregnancy. And I just kind of thought it was all normal. So then come January 29th, 2021, at exactly 37 weeks, I went into labor. I think my daughter knew she needed to make it to term to have her mom be okay. So I went into labor and also nervous. I knew the implications of being 37 weeks, even though babies are term, sometimes they have issues feeding, breathing, but she came out perfect and she did really well. We went home after 24 hours and the whole birth process was really amazing. I found myself, really grateful and lucky for that side of things to go well. And so we went home and here's our first coming home. This is our first night at home. And I love this picture because I feel like most moms can relate to a lot of things going on here. Your breastfeeding pillow, the giant pillows that you're sitting on top of because it hurts to just sit on the couch. And then our sweet puppy, meeting our newborn for the first time. But this is kind of the glamorous side of things. But we came home and my parents were there for a few days. They were watching our dogs while we were in the hospital giving birth. And so they were there, but they didn't stay long. They work. And so they had to go back to Phoenix and work. And actually, because I delivered early at 37 weeks, my husband, who works for himself, didn't have time to prepare. So he had a couple of projects that he had to wrap up. He was our main source of income at the time because I did not get paid maternity leave. Even though I got the time off, I didn't get a paycheck during that time. So we really depended on him. And so, just a couple of days after giving birth, I was home alone with my daughter for, most parts of the day. And the sleep deprivation started to really kick in and the exhaustion. So I love these photos. I feel like they really show my life in those 3 months postpartum where I was on maternity leave. But my daughter didn't want to sleep anywhere but our chest for a long time. And now I know that that's normal, but it was definitely a struggle. And you can see the Frida mom underwear that I probably stayed in for much longer than I needed to, the burp cloth, the unwashed hair. This is just so postpartum right here. But we, got through the first couple of weeks and my husband was amazing. He was really trying to help as much as he could, but I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't sleep when the baby was sleeping. I was waking up every 3 hours to breastfeed. I was so anxious for her something to happen while I was sleeping. I had seen the worst during residency and training, so I felt like that kind of contributed a little bit. But even though we were doing all the safe sleep, things, I just was so worried about her pausing breathing or something happening. So even though, she started sleeping longer stretches, only 3 to 4 hours, but I wasn't sleeping during that time. So I really wasn't getting more than 4 hours of sleep in the total of 24 hours, and a lot of it was fragmented. I was highly anxious about our breastfeeding relationship. I wouldn't let anyone give her a bottle because I was, totally afraid that it was going to affect things. And then we were isolated. I think this is where the pandemic really contributes a lot to postpartum, depression and anxiety, because you don't have your village anymore. We were afraid of even my parents coming down and staying with us as, another person that could bring COVID into our home. It was before vaccines had really fully rolled out for the population. we were afraid of our friends that had kids to come by and meet the baby because kids were in school or they were out doing activities. So I really didn't see anyone in that, probably 2 months postpartum. I saw my best friend, who I'll talk about later, but other than that, I was just really isolated at home a lot. And like I was saying, my husband was going out and going to work, and I started to really resent him for that he got to leave and see people and have adult conversations. And I was just here at home with this beautiful baby, but she needed me 24/7, and it felt like I never got a break. I was also struggling with a loss of my identity for a long time. Actually almost my whole life I was working, and I was in the medical field helping other people. I was physically active. I enjoyed running and, exercising, and all of a sudden all the things that I felt like made me, I wasn't doing anymore. All I was doing was taking care of my child. And although I loved it, I didn't love every moment of it. And so then I started to feel like something must be wrong with me. Why aren't I enjoying every minute? Most women would kill to be at home with their babies. And we had friends that were having babies around the same time. And, seeing on social media, which I hate social media, but it was my one way to connect with the world. I was seeing these beautiful pictures of, women bonding with their babies. And I just thought, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not meant to do this. And, something must be wrong with me. So I just felt like I loved her so much, but I couldn't love her the way I knew I was supposed to. And I thought it must be me and not, something else going on. So sorry. So fast forward, so I survived this way for about 6 weeks. And then at 6 weeks, my parents-in-law, my husband's parents, came to stay with us. And I thought, oh, good. Okay, I finally am going to have some help at home. I'll have extra hands. I'll get some rest. I'll start to feel better. Maybe I can go out and do some things for myself. But the opposite ended up happening, where I was too anxious to leave her with them. I was afraid something would happen while I was gone. I couldn't stand to hear her cry while she was being held by someone else. And so even though it was supposed to be a time where I was getting more help, I felt like I was doing more work and I was actually more stressed out. Mm-hmm. So I started, my husband kind of this whole time was hinting at, maybe you should talk to someone, maybe, you need to talk to your friends. And I just got really defensive and kind of actually angry that he would even suggest that something might be wrong. But finally, at about that 6-week mark, I decided, I do need to talk to someone. So I had my 6-week OB checkup at that time. And I thought, great, like I know as a pediatrician that postpartum screening for depression usually happens at this visit. It had been happening in our pediatrician visits, but I wasn't really accepting of the fact that something might be wrong. And so I went into my visit thinking I'm going to bring up my mood. I'm going to see what she thinks usually, and just kind of talk about it. So I got to the visit and it was very quick, and there was no screening. There was no survey to fill out. There was she did ask me questions about my mood and how I was feeling, but I was so ashamed and so, felt so much guilt around it that I didn't feel comfortable full on just jumping right into it and saying that I was struggling. So I left the visit. I came back to my car. I started crying and I couldn't stop. I cried on the way home. I cried in the garage when I pulled in. And then I cried in our bedroom and just stayed in our room for the entire day. And I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to see my daughter. I didn't want her to see me that way. I didn't want my parents-in-law to see me that way. And I was just really, really ashamed that I couldn't do it all and I couldn't manage this on my own. So my husband, who's very smart, called my best friend. She's been my best friend for over 20 years. She has 3 kids of her own who are a little older than my baby was, but she came over and I don't even remember how long we talked, but I think it was for hours, where she held my hand and just talked me through it and said, we're going to get through it. And that's when I decided it was time to seek help and seek seek therapy. So luckily, just a week later, we had our 2-month checkup with our pediatrician, and she is a friend of mine, but also at my pediatrician's office, they do postpartum screening, and I did fill out the EPDS, which we'll talk about later. And I answered everything honestly this time. And she looked at it and said, "I'm worried about you." And so that really started the conversation of me being honest about what was going on. And I got connected to therapy. And so this picture is actually that night after I was crying the whole day. You might not be able to tell, but I can see the puffy eyes, and I'll just always remember that, at the end of it all, my daughter was there. And that was kind of the start of our real connection and relationship, because I got the help I needed after that. So this is a more recent photo, but this is how I feel now, after talking with someone and going through therapy. And it wasn't just therapy, it was, talking with my family and figuring out ways to get me to sleep and to help, me feel like I'm taken care of, and help with the burden of motherhood and things around the house, and ways that, I can feel like I'm supported. So slowly I felt myself returning, myself that I knew I could be, the mom that I wanted to be to her. And I no longer felt like I was just trying to get through the day. I was enjoying my moments with her and cherishing them much more than I was before, rather than feeling depleted by them. And then, so this was a picture I took the morning of the 4th Trimester Ecosystem Summit. That was just amazing. But that's the 4th Trimester shirt. And so I just thought, like, oh, I've come full circle now. So I realized that if I was struggling as much as I was, and knowing as much as I do, working in healthcare, I just couldn't even imagine what other moms are going through who may not feel comfortable talking with their pediatrician or their OB, or who don't get screened at all and don't have the opportunity to even start the conversation, or who don't know that it's normal to feel that way, or not normal, but it's not uncommon, and you're not alone, and there's things that we can do for it. So I found out about 4th Trimester from Milk and Honey, actually a breastfeeding support group here in Tucson, and I knew I wanted to get involved. So I had reached out to them and heard back, and here we are today. So my main point of sharing what I went through is hopefully just to spread awareness and to normalize us having these conversations and talking about our struggles. I saw something, I think on 4th Trimester social media, but it said one of the best ways to support another mom is to be honest about your experiences in motherhood. And so that's my goal today. So kind of now putting on my pediatrician hat, we'll go through just, I think, some important numbers, why this matters. I think everyone here knows why, but for anyone watching, and then talking about screening, and then we'll open it up to discussion. But I found this infographic from a website called Motherhood Understood, which does have a lot of great free resources, some paid resources as well for postpartum parents, moms and dads actually. But I fact checked most of these, and I think they're pretty much true. But just looking at the numbers, it's obvious that this is important. And so 1 in 5 women will experience a maternal mental health illness. So whether that's anxiety, depression, I think the newer term for, overarching all of these mental health conditions is perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And so that really encompasses not only the depression side of it, because it's not just depression. For me, I think that was the hardest part. Was I'm not depressed, I'm not sad, but I was highly anxious. And so anxiety was a much bigger component of what was going on for me. OCD can happen as well. Postpartum psychosis, though much more rare, is lumped under there too. So we're learning that, yes, it's not just depression. And you can read through these numbers. I don't think I have to read over all of them out loud, but I want to point out that over 20% of postpartum deaths are caused by suicide. That's something that's completely preventable. Suicide is 100% preventable, and it's the leading cause of mortality in postpartum women. So we need to be doing better. We need to be supporting moms better. Looking at dads numbers too, 1 in 10 dads will actually experience it as well. So we can't ignore them in the conversation. And I read somewhere a statistic that moms end up doing better if they have a dad who's supportive, during the postpartum period. And I think obviously that makes sense, but another reason to include dads in our conversations. African-American women are affected, much higher proportion, as far as 35% for suffering from perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and that only 15% of women are diagnosed. So that, for me as a pediatrician, was the number I really focused on. Of we're missing, if we can't know that there's a problem if we can't diagnose it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, this, why it matters. Again, I think everyone here knows why it matters, but I liked this infographic because this actually came from an article titled "The Societal Costs of Untreated Perinatal Mood and Anxiety Disorders in the United States." And it's been referenced a lot in political discussions about things like paid maternity leave, better mental health support, kind of policy, making, because it's showing that not only are there are these effects on the mother, I think the highest and most important being the risk of suicide, but there's effects on the children as well. And there's also societal effects. There's an estimated total societal cost in the US that 14.2 billion is spent on the mother-child pair, from birth to age 5, if for untreated postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. So our society benefits as well from these women getting help and getting what they need. As a pediatrician, I really look at the child side of it and see how much this matters. And looking at the research, we know more now than we did 10 years ago. So we know that infants of moms with untreated mood disorders postpartum are at increased risk for attachment disorders, behavioral problems, developmental delay, and all of those things can actually be reversed if it's treated. But if it goes untreated, those behavioral problems continue into childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood as well. So the early response to these conditions is key. And so, as they age, children of mothers with untreated PPD often have poor self-control, poor peer relationships, school problems, and aggression. So screening really, I think it's improved, but it's not perfect still, obviously with my own experience. Not until 2010 did the AAP, they were the first organization to start recommending postpartum screening for moms in the postpartum period. And then once the USPSTF, which is kind of our task force for recommending preventative care in the US, in 2016, they kind of got on board and said, yes, this needs to be part of our routine screening, especially for depression. We need to include postpartum perinatal mothers in those, in that group. And so since then, it's become a lot more discussed and implemented. But a 2013 survey actually found that less than half of pediatricians are screening mothers for postpartum depression. So it's still, we're not doing a great job of it still, and we need to do better. So there's 2 validated screening tools. There's the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. That's the one I put to the right. There are shortened versions of this as well that some clinics use that only have 3 to 5 questions, but this is the full thing of it. And you can actually do this on your own. It's available online, it's free to anyone, and the instructions for scoring it are there as well. So you, as much as you should be screened at your provider's office, if you're worried about yourself and you're not sure, you can answer these questions and screen it, and it will kind of tell you where you sit as far as possibility of depression or anxiety. And then that needs to obviously be addressed and brought up with your healthcare provider, but all of these are available. And so the ACOG, which is the governing organization for OBGYNs, they recommend that at least once in the perinatal period and during postpartum that this should be used. And then the AAP recommends a more frequent administration at 1, 2, 4, and 6 months. And the thought behind this is as a pediatrician, you're still developing a relationship with the family. So a mom may not feel comfortable at the 1 or 2 month visit to be honest about how she's feeling, or even recognize, that she's feeling a certain way. But by the 4 or 6 month visit, maybe she'll feel comfortable. The other thought behind this is there's actually 2 known peaks of postpartum depression. More commonly at 4 to 6 weeks, we see it occurring, but then also there's another little peak at 6 months. So continuing that screening, through 6 months is really important. And then just another mention that screening alone is not enough. So we also need to be following up these screens, referring to appropriate resources for follow-up and treatment. And then just kind of some closing remarks as a pediatrician, things that I wish patients, should hopefully will take away from this talk and also know about is that be honest with your healthcare workers. Like I said before, we can't help you if we don't know that there's a problem. And our job is to help. It's not to judge. It's not to, think that you're a bad mother. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. And especially as a pediatrician, I know that your baby's health depends on your health. And so my priority is your mental health as well. One thing to remember is screening is not diagnostic. So even if you, do have a positive score on these screening tests, it doesn't mean you're committed to getting medication or, long-term therapy, but you definitely need to be evaluated and discuss it. But there may be other things that we can do that will help your mood and support you, that it's not always about medication. And I think that's what some moms worry about, is that they'll just be put on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, and that's not the case. Asking for help does not make you a bad parent. I wish I could tell every new mom this and that they would listen, but now I know it doesn't. And if anything, getting the help that you need makes you an excellent parent. It makes you available for your child, and set an example that this matters. Your mental health matters. And then if your OB or pediatrician doesn't offer screening, I hope that I'm empowering you to bring up your concerns in your visit. In that postpartum visit, talk about how you're feeling, especially if you feel like something's not right. You may not feel depressed or anxious or recognize it, but for me, I knew that something wasn't right. I didn't feel like myself, and I just didn't know how to go about talking about that. And then asking for resources. Your OB or your pediatrician may know of support groups. They may know of ways to get your partner involved or ways to take the load off of you. That's what they're there for. They're there for brainstorming how we can help you. So just to kind of put a little plug for our practice, but we have a mental health professional at our office that will see our postpartum moms. So, we are able to make that connection, and we're also working on starting a new mom support group for our patients. So other offices may have something similar that's not obvious to parents when they're at the visit, but maybe if it came up in conversation. And I wanted to add that if this talk hit home for you, or if you're feeling any of these feelings, there's support in the community. These are just a couple of local resources. Jenny is going to share some as well, but Postpartum Support International is an amazing resource. There's an Arizona chapter. They actually have a document that has a full list of local resources, but they have a phone line that you can text or call at any time as well. The Tucson Postpartum Depression Coalition is available there too. And then I just love these villages, the 4th trimester that does. I think it's a great way to meet other people that are going through what you're going through, and to know about resources in your community too. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for letting me share my experience. And I wanted to end. So this is another poem by that author I was talking about in the beginning, Jessica Ehrlichs. And this poem's quite long, so I just wanted to put the ending of it because I love it. It's the whole poem talks about the contradictions of motherhood, which I think we can all identify with, but it's one beautiful contradiction, a journey of wrong turns that are probably still right, and dreams of the future, even if you don't get enough sleep to dream. Exhaustion, but effortless love, the hardest and most rewarding thing ever, motherhood. And so I just wanted to, those are kind of my references for some of the facts I talked about, and I couldn't not put a cute baby and puppy photo in there. So I would love to spend the rest of the time now just talking, answering any questions that people have, but also discussing your own experience, either as a patient or a provider with postpartum screening, or anything in the postpartum period.
Thank you so much, Alina. This was so good and so relatable too. I think that's the other piece that, yeah, so many of us have gone through similar struggles, but we feel like we're the only ones, like really feel like we're the only ones.
Especially
yeah, it's, yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing this and sharing it from your perspective as a physician too, I think is really important. I think when we hear it from other people, we're like, okay, well, maybe, but when we hear it from someone who went through it, who, yeah, I mean, you had all the resources of a healthcare provider, I suppose, and still having that challenge and not having, you know, the support that you needed and the knowledge too, right? I think that's the other piece. Yeah, my own experience was similar. I knew how to spot postpartum depression, but I didn't know how to spot it in myself.
No, it's so true. I know. And I had a lot of friends that before I gave birth were like, oh, you're a pediatrician, you've got this, you're so prepared, and you probably know everything already. And then when we came home, I remember telling my husband, I know nothing. I don't know. I know how to medically take care of a baby, but I don't know how to raise a newborn or, you know, how to get her to sleep and how to get her to calm and soothe. And it's so different when you're the one going through it rather than the healthcare provider.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. And the poetry is so beautiful. Actually, you're making me think maybe we should do a whole session on like poetry for motherhood.
Yes, I
love this. And I have like a whole book of my favorite poems too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so if there are any questions that people want to ask right now on Facebook Live, you're welcome to ask them. Otherwise, we'll probably just pop off and then we can ask more questions there. Is there anything anybody wants to ask while we're on Facebook Live? Sounds like maybe not. All right, if you're on Facebook and you would like to join and ask some questions or share your experience, please feel free to go ahead and join the Zoom link instead. I'm gonna go ahead and pop us off now. So we'll wave bye to you, Facebook land, and we'll go have our discussion.